Welcome to Hold the Truth Hostage. Because if the truth was so important, we would hold it hostage and not accept any lies. Now, I've been thinking about this story for a while. I've been thinking about putting my thoughts through about this. Now, you know, I've been following Zack, your boy Zack. Been following him when he was Diversity and Comics. Now it's Comic Books Matter with Zach. And, I've been following Ethan's channel too as well. And I've even been following the Just Some Guy. I followed Yellow Flash, his original page when it was deleted. I followed a lot of the, comicsgate, community. Basically the community that focuses on comics. Now, something a lot of them don't want to bring up or don't even want to talk about is the fact that, I'll use your boy Zach as an example, just to, prove my thoughts on this, just to go through them. Now, there's a big phenomenon, it's been going on for a while now, and it's been very successful, which is the whole indiegogo and crowdfunding scene when it comes to the comics, Kickstarters, and so on. But at the same time, it's been abused. It's become more of a scam, or should I say a fraud. That's what it really becomes in my eyes. It's become a fraud because I'll use Jawbreakers, for example. Now, for Jawbreakers 1, now before I even get into this, give me 1 second. Now, Zach, when he started his channel, he wants to help the industry and, really wants, better comics and so on. But in reality, it's been exposed as a fraud. A lot of times you'll watch, as it used to be called Diversity in Comics, or now it's Comics Matter with Zach. The biggest problem with that is if comics mattered, you would have been sharing or interviewing other successful indie creators. This is how it gets exposed to be a fraud in this case, because I'll use Jawbreakers. Jawbreakers Lost Souls. Okay. Now, Jawbreakers Lost Souls raised about $404,000. Now, that's $404,000. All right. Now, what he was asking for, and this is where, now he was asking for, I think he was asking for like 5,000, So he was asking for 5,000, I think, when it started. So he made $404,000 from that, Now, here's where it gets exposed to where it becomes a case of fraud and, just in all honesty, it's just an abuse. It's a way of abusing the donors to just gather more money, So now he comes up with Jawbreakers Lost Souls Remastered. Okay. Now, I think remastered, I'm looking through the old campaign. I think it was asking for probably $10,000. Let's just say it was $10,000. Now, here's the thing. Now, how do you need $10,000? No, in fact, yeah, he was asking for $15,000 for the Lost Souls Remastered. Now, why would you need $15,000 if you raised $404,000 for the original Jawbreakers Lost Souls? Now, what's happening with Indiegogo is that a lot of creators are just abusing it to just, it's become, in my honest opinion, for a lot of creators, basically basically a quick way to make some money. You know, it's like your project is your lottery ticket, you know, and depending on how successful it is, that's how much money you'll take home. Now, of course, you know, with the physical prints, you know, there's a price. You know, there's a price to that. You know what I mean? There's a certain amount of money that is lost because of the physical printing, depending on how much it costs to print the book. You know, but at the same time, that's still you raise $404,000. So why would you need to raise another Indiegogo for 15,000 when you made $404,000 on the original Jawbreakers? Now, it doesn't end with that. Now, around the same time when he was hosting Jawbreakers, he had Iron Sights, you know. So let's see the original Iron Sights. Give me 1 minute. So Iron Sights, the graphic novel, he asked for $10,000, you know. So and he made $119,000 from the original Iron Sights graphic novel. So now, how do you need $10,000 to raise? How do you need to raise $10,000 when you made over $404,000 from Lost Souls alone? You know, Jawbreakers. Now it doesn't stop there. You know, he has of course, he has another campaign for, you know, I think the sequel. You know, he had a sequel to Jawbreakers. You know, it was God King. You know what I mean? And he asked for, give me 1 minute. They won't show me how much he asked for, but I think he asked for about, give me 1 minute. God damn it. Won't show up. Yeah, I think he asked for, let's just say he asked for about, I can't see it for some reason. But, you know, he asked for, let's just say he asked for $10,000. So he asked for 10,000, he made $251,000, let's say, plus on that, you know, the God King book. The reason I'm bringing this up is that at some point, the amount of money you're making has to be going into the product. So if you have a surplus, let's say he has a surplus of over $250,000, how do you need to raise funds for the next issues that are, let's say, $15,000 to $10,000? How do you need to raise more money? I'll tell you how you need to raise more money. It's because you're pocketing the money. You're pocketing the money. I mean, for example, Zach raised, let's say he's raised over $900,000. You don't really see I'm not even sure he has a website, you know. Let me just check it out. Good old comics. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it looks like he does have a website for it. You know, Splato Comics. You know what I mean? But even on this website, you can't really order it. I'm trying to see. I don't think you can order the books from his website. It looks kind of like a placeholder website. You know, it's just there to be there. But my thing is, how do you raise over $900,000 and you don't reinvest it into the product, into the brand to expand it? At some point, the product and the brand have to be profitable to the point where they're stable in their own. So basically what he's doing is every project he's going to keep having an Indiegogo. Now, where this hurts, and I'll check out Ethan Van Sciver's Cyber Frog. Okay, Yeah. So the original Cyber Frog, he asked for even Ethan Van Sciver, he also sold some digitals as well. But on the original Cyber Frog, I can't see the I can't seem to see the can't see what he was asking for. Man, this is the problem with Indiegogo. They're not showing it for some reason. But let's assume for the original Cyber Frog, let's just say he asked for 20 grand. Let's just say he asked for 20,000. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah. He asked for, yeah, let's say he asked for 20 grand, you know. So on the original Cyber Frog, he made 178,000 plus. So you made $178,000. So now, now let's check the next Cyber Frog. Let's check the next one. So for Cyber Frog 2, if you made $178,000 on the original campaign for the first issue, how do you need to raise another 20 grand? What's going on in this is what a lot of comic book YouTubers don't they don't talk about this. Maybe it's a mental, not a lot of people can be as logical as I tend to be on things here and there. But the problem, and this is hurting the indie, comic scene a lot, it's gonna have irreparable damage, is that you have people that have already raised money just bleeding, draining the donors dry. So for those indie comic creators that really need to raise funds for their first or next issue, they get punished by this because you have, and I'm just using names here, they're the most well-known names, but you have Ethan and you have Zach and you have a few other, I'll even use, for example, the umbrella guy, you know what I'm saying? The umbrella guy, I think he raised some money for a book, you know. So you raised, yeah, the umbrella guy, you know what I'm saying? It was called the Littlest Umbrella. So he raised $33,000 when he was asking for 10,000. So now he's releasing another campaign, you know what I mean? He's released another one for the sequel, but the thing is this, even if he released the sequel, let's say he's asking for another 10,000, what do you need another 10,000 for if you made 30 grand? Isn't the purpose of raising the money on your Indiegogo to have a budget for future projects? Isn't that the purpose? But it isn't. The purpose of it is to just keep cashing in on that fundraising money. And that's and in the long run, this is really hurting the indie market. It's hurting the indie market the most. Now, another problem, I watch, Comics Matter with Zach, and I watched, Ethan Van Sciver's page here and there, and I watch the Umbrella Guy, Yellow Flash, just some guy, and where they're hurting the indie market the most, and in actuality, they're disrespecting the whole comic book industry, is that they keep falsifying that Marvel and DC are still comic book companies. They're no longer comic book companies. DC and Marvel failed. DC went bankrupt, Marvel went bankrupt. They had to sell to for example, Disney owns Marvel. If Disney didn't buy Marvel, Marvel would have been bankrupt and underwater. DC is owned by Warner Brothers, which is owned by AT&T. They're two companies that failed at comics. Even with the luxury of well-known characters such as Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, a list of, great globally recognized characters, they failed. In all honesty, this is a disrespectful thing to companies that are still alive, that are still breathing, that are just comics such as Image Comics, Dark Horse. You have Boom Studios, you have Devil Do, have a whole list of companies that are comic book companies first. You know, they license out their products for TV shows and films and so on. But at the end of the day, Marvel and DC are just branches of bigger companies that have comic books are not their first priority. But back to the matter at hand. What Zach, Ethan, and a lot of Indiegogo creators are doing, they're actually draining the well because they keep claiming they need more money for their next project. But if you raised over $900,000, Zach, and if you raised over $900,000, Ethan, and some others, how do you need to raise funds for something that costs $10,000 when you're asking for 10,000 to 15,000? It's because they're pocketing all of the money. They're not putting the money into their series to have it continue and function without needing any more fundraisers. Now, I would understand if they had a fundraiser for something, a new fundraiser for something extremely experimental that they weren't sure of, and they let the public know, I'm not sure about this book. I want to keep the series going that you already fully funded. Now I want to raise some money for that. But instead, they're just trying to bleed the well dry. You could even search on YouTube, on Twitter, where they're posting, I'm going to make another 30,000, going to make another $100,000. They're really damaging the indie comic book creators that really need the money. They're taking that money away from them. And another thing that you see on Zach's channel is that, all he does, a lot of videos, is attacking Marvel, attacking DC, and so on. But here's the thing about DC and Marvel. They're actually more pro indie than Zach and Ethan Van Sciver. The reason for that is that DC and Marvel just don't want to hire you. They don't want to hire you to work for them. But you have guys like Ethan and Zach and some others that are they're going out there taking the money from other indie creators. You know what I mean? When they don't need it. You're actually, what's happened is that, a lot of when Zach started his YouTube channel, he talked about the gatekeepers, the SJWs on Marvel and DC that don't want to hire people and so on. But he's become a gatekeeper, and his gatekeeping's far more damaging. The damage is that he along with Ethan and some other people, they're gatekeeping from the donors, from the public donations to those indie creators that really need the money. And another thing is you have this whole thing I've been watching on YouTube with I can't the non-official comicsgate or comic grifters or non-official comicsgate, since Preston owns the comicsgate trademark legally, and all those that keep mentioning it don't really own it. That's another thing too that shows you that they didn't care, is that you had Comicsgate, the amount of momentum that name and that brand was garnering, since, since Image Comics, I'd say the Comicsgate brand is as a word and as a known entity is huge. There's probably over 1 million, over 100 million views on videos mentioning Comicsgate, over 100 million clicks mentioning Comicsgate. But you notice that Zach, Ethan, and all the other quote unquote where Comicsgate never tried to trademark or buy out the name because they never had any intention to do good by it. Because you have an example. I'll tell you this. I used to follow comicsmatter, until I really watched it and saw what he was doing. Every video, Zach will have some issue with Marvel and DC, but you never see him invite a successful indie creator that succeeded to interview them. If it's all about improving the state of comics and highlighting good comics, you wouldn't just be bashing Marvel and DC, which aren't comic book companies to begin with, you know? And then you talk about you want to help the industry and highlight what's good with the industry, yet you never invite any indie creators to promote their indiegogo, to promote their book or review their book. I'm gonna tell you why. Because as long as your books are being funded, that's what's good for the industry. If you watch Ethan Van Sciver, you watch Zach, you watch the Umbrella Guy, you watch a lot of these, people that get funding for their books, one thing you'll see that they all do the same thing. It's what's good for the industry is when their pockets are filled. You're not gonna see them promote or gather around each other to start a full brand movement. For example, you had the Comicsgate, they didn't go to trademark it, and then you never see them promote other indies that are succeeding and helping the industry. You don't see any top 10 indies of this month, top 10 indies of the year. You don't see any of those, because all that matters is that their pockets get filled first. They get to pocket the money. That's all that matters. And like I keep saying, that's what's harming the indie industry, is that you see a lot of these guys, they're just using your Indiegogos and Kickstarters like a lottery ticket. Let me put a book up there for 10,000 and pray that I make over triple that much. And then the next book I'll do the same thing. And what's going to happen is that the well is going to run out. The donors, and what's damaging is that the donors are going to see. So you're telling me, you made $400,000 for Jawbreakers, the first book, and you still need to raise $10,000 to $15,000 for another book. Where's the money going to? And what the donors are looking at, it's not just the donors. What those investors are looking at is, let's say, a private investor. They're looking at it and say, business investor, they're looking at it, wait a minute, Zach made $404,000 on Indiegogo. Then he needs to raise money again for the next book. Then I guess this Jawbreakers isn't profitable. It's not profitable beyond the donations made by the public. It can't sustain itself with the funding and budget. It's not selling. Another thing is the guy isn't going to conventions or nothing. I plan to make another video. You know what I mean? The fire's been lit. And I want to thank the Comics Hut. The comic book hut. Man, he makes some great videos. He goes deep in there, goes deep into the details. And I want to thank Wow. The page that Captain Cummins now has. And also I want to thank Progress Comics. Let me second. Man, I can't find the page, but you know, there's some other YouTubers out there that's covering it. But in all honesty, just to end this this video, I'ma say this, that man, they're just out there pocketing the money, man. They don't plan to help the industry. They're doing nothing more, and there's a lot of infighting too. You know, I would have to do another video, but there's a lot of infighting where, you know, your quote unquote, what I saw a video where Ethan Van Sciver's laughing about a lady having cancer, you know, and I saw Zach comment on it, you know, if I could die laughing, this is a positive thing that someone's dying of cancer. You know, it just exposes that they're poison. You know what I mean? I don't like to use the toxic word. You know, toxic, it's overused, and you know, it has some quotes to it, but I believe poisonous. Ethan and Zach, when it comes to the indie market, they're poisonous to it, because all they're doing is, instead of highlighting and promoting other indie creators that need it. For example, Zach, when he had comics, Diversity and Comics, he did a video once where he was talking about building a whole universe and, you know, collaborating with other people and such. You know, now he's made over $1 million on Indiegogo. Yet you just released another Jawbreakers fundraiser for, what is that? I think 15 grand. That's like Spider-Man. I'll use an example to show you how stupid this is. So Marvel made, you know, let's say they made over $1 billion. They made over $1 billion with Avengers. Now, if Marvel comes to Indiegogo to raise funds for their next Avengers film, you're gonna look at it as, you know what I mean? You're gonna look at it, this is a fraud. You know, this is them just stealing money, you know, because they don't need it unless they pocketed all the money. What Zach and Ethan and all of them keep doing is they just keep raising funds and pocketing the money. Indiegogo to them is basically the lottery. They just go there to cash in. It's kind of like this. If you were to ask me for, let's say you were like, you know, I need $10,000 to get this book off the ground, and I gave you $500,000, and each book is gonna cost you $10,000 or $15,000. How do you need another investment from me? You don't need it. You don't need another investment. The series should be, you know, self-sustained. It should be maintaining itself by now. But you know, they're not gonna do that. They just need more money. They need to keep robbing the donors, and you know, it's fraudulent, man. You're just pocketing the money. Of course, every time you're gonna need to raise 10,000, 15,000, because every time you make a surplus of money for your Indiegogo, you pocket the cash. You put it right in your pocket, right in your bank. It doesn't go into funding that series. I mean, you know, you go on Zach's website, you could barely buy the books. How did you make over $1 million and you don't even have an online store to buy products? You know, it's a joke, man. You know what I mean? It's all a joke. But, you know, this has been Hold the Truth hostage. And if the truth was so important, we would hold it hostage and avoid accepting any lies. All right, have a good one.